Hana, good afternoon. Thank you for your time with us here on the SABC.
Thank you for the invitation. Very excited to be part of the discussion here.
Hana, what can you say was the biggest impact of COVID-19 on the sector? And at this point, have schools recovered 3 years later?
I believe that the biggest impact of COVID-19 was that it made the sector and the schools wonder how education should be delivered to the learners. We often use the term reimagine education, and it's true. Governments around the world, including South Africa, rushed to deliver online or hybrid learning modalities. And the trend was already there, yet the pandemic fast-tracked this progress in a very rapid way. And I think this sudden urgency in reimagine education and the global and the national priority toward education in improving the quality, the relevance, the learning outcomes overall is a good thing. It requires something like a pandemic to truly wake people's attention toward education. However, the impact of the pandemic is big, and it still continues to be. The impact will be felt for years to come. And with the adoption of the new tools, the approaches, the new demand, the role of the teachers itself has shifted from being an instructor to a facilitator. The children's mental and physical health is still suffering. And so there are many, many priorities that came from climate crisis to rise of violence, South Africa's increasing economic inequality, the digital literacy, the online violence, et cetera, et cetera. So these factors really affect the children's access, but also the learning itself. And keeping in mind the quality of education and the learning was not very good in South Africa before the pandemic. And now that we are in the post-pandemic phase, what are we experiencing? We're experiencing the economic stagnation. And unfortunately, economic stagnation increases the social ills, which affects children's schooling and learning. And so overall, South Africa is facing a very, very difficult time in recovering from the lost time of learning, let alone improve the learning outcomes. And I believe we've seen the impact from the recent Pearl's international assessment data on reading and writing, which show that 81% of the grade 4 learners in South Africa are not able to read for meaning.
Absolutely. Hana, on the back of what you echoed about reimagining and innovation, perhaps as we look forward, at this point, what should schools be doing to help learners get back to pre-COVID levels of learning, if that was the benchmark? I think there are many things, but I would highlight 2 key overarching requirements. One is strengthening leadership and management. And the second is the actual implementation of the policies and the strategies that the Central Department of Education has set up. School leadership matters. The principals that have a very strong commitment to improving how schools are run, classes are managed, teachers are encouraged and empowered together with the communities make difference. Unique ideas come and practical ways come up when you work together. Schools cannot be run in the same way as before, and I believe we all know that. And so the school principals and their deputies, they need to be very innovative themselves, entrepreneurial in a way, and continue to learning to really strengthen their management. And Unicef actually recently did a visit to schools for a program that was funded by European Union, where I met with a number of very inspiring principals. They went through a training to strengthen their leadership, to ultimately strengthen children's reading and writing. And through the training, they connected with other principals in different communities or districts. And so they adjust their school management that really affects children's learning. And when it comes to the second point on the implementation of policies, when you look at other countries around the world and comparing with them, South Africa is a country with decent education policies. It's a country that has committed to ensuring inclusive education, and there are associated policies and plans. However, the actual implementation is weak overall, especially under the decentralized education system structure. the level of the commitment of policies, whether it's related to infrastructure or teachers or realizing inclusive education for children with disabilities, non-South Africans, tend to get diluted in a way where when it's trickled down, because many other factors and implementers, the actors come into play. And so continued support for education administration at the provincial and district level is quite imperative.
Hannah, just very quickly before I let you go, we obviously during COVID had to adapt on the go, and rather than being proactive in some cases, we had to react to what was happening at that point. So going forward, looking at what transpired and the lessons learned, what mitigating factors can stakeholders in the education sector perhaps put in place to ensure that the next pandemic does little to no disruption to education?
Thank you for the question. This is very important because I recently did read a research saying that close to 30% possibility that the next pandemic will happen in the next 10 years. So this is a very good question. And there are a number of mitigation factors. The school leaders I mentioned earlier must deepen their investment in the community-centered knowledge and the multi-stakeholder planning as well, the family engagement as a matter of trust building and the pedagogical innovation. So as said, the communities, they have experienced the pandemic themselves. They have their experiences. The community-centered knowledge that directly affect how the mitigation measures should be is essential. There are differences in the landscape, the environment, infrastructure, etc. And the school leaders, the policymakers must incorporate these factors to develop the mitigation plan. To start off with, is there a school, district, provincial, national level mitigation and contingency plan? Is it appropriately shared among all stakeholders from the system level to parents and caretakers? And also when emergency occurs, one sector cannot work alone. It's been said for decades that there needs to be a multi-stakeholder, multi-sectoral approach. However, the reality is that the sectoral interventions are still working in silos. Education is working within education people, and this needs to change. Children needs to be supported holistically from the education side, from health and nutrition, from protection point of view. And related to that, where did the lessons learned go? Has it really been captured very well? Communication is critical when emergency happens. The level of the stress and the negative impact exacerbates when communication is poor. Yes. And lastly, but most importantly, the pedagogical innovation is ongoing. There are countless partners, including Unicef, that are testing and piloting new approaches. But the key question is, which innovative approaches is able to scale? Information and data on these pilots, are they shared? And so South Africa is doing a lot, making a lot of efforts in improving access and quality of education, yet the collective effort can improve more so that we can mitigate further fragmentation and any negative damage to the education system and beyond.
Hannah,
I think all these factors are key building.
No, they're key. And Hannah,
these
thank
are just key to building resilience system.
Yeah, Hannah, thank you for your time with us on the SABC and for sharing those sentiments as a spotlight on South Africa's education sector during Youth Month, of course, came to the fore. Here we're looking at the impact of as well as beyond COVID-19 and how to accelerate the recovery, perhaps for the long term. Head of Education, Unicef South Africa, Hana Yoshimoto, joining us for that chat again. Thank you to her for her time with us.